My wife called me a failure in front of her entire family. She said it like it was a joke, like it was something everyone at the table could laugh about. And the worst part? Most of them did. But what none of them realized that night was that those words would change everything. My name is Alex. I'm 29 years old, and 2 years ago, I married a woman named Rachel. When we first met, Rachel seemed like the kind of person who had everything figured out. She was confident, ambitious, and came from a very successful family. Her parents owned several businesses. Her older brother worked in finance and made more money than most people our age. Compared to them, I probably looked ordinary. I worked as a project coordinator for a small logistics company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and I was working towards something bigger. At least that's what I believed. When Rachel and I first started dating, she never seemed to mind that I wasn't wealthy or wildly successful yet. In fact, she used to tell me she admired how hard I worked. She would say things like, "I know you're going to build something big one day." And hearing that meant everything to me. Because when someone you love believes in you, it makes you believe in yourself even more. But over time, something started changing. It was subtle at first. Little comments, little jokes. Rachel would sometimes tease me about my job. Still working late every night for that tiny company? She would say it with a smile, so I laughed it off. Sometimes her brother would make comments too. "Man, Alex, when are you going to start making real money?" Everyone would laugh, and I told myself they were just joking. But looking back now, those jokes weren't really jokes. They were warnings. The moment everything changed happened during a dinner at Rachel's parents' house. They had invited us over for what they called a family night. Rachel's parents lived in a huge house outside the city, the kind of place that looked more like a luxury hotel than a home. When we arrived, her father was already talking about some new investment he had made. Her brother was explaining how his company had just expanded into another state. Every conversation seemed to revolve around success, money, achievements. I mostly stayed quiet, listening, not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew I didn't belong in those conversations yet. Dinner started normally. Rachel's mother had cooked a huge meal. Everyone was laughing and telling stories. For a moment, everything actually felt comfortable. But then Rachel's father asked a simple question. "So, Alex," he said, cutting into his steak, "how's work going?" I smiled politely. "It's going well. We've been growing pretty steadily this year." Her brother leaned back in his chair. "Growing," he said with a smirk. "What does that even mean? Like 2 new clients?" A couple of people chuckled. I tried to laugh along with them. "It's a small company," I said, "but we're expanding." Suddenly, Rachel spoke up. "Oh, he's always expanding." Her tone sounded playful, but something about it made me uneasy. Rachel took a sip of wine and looked around the table. "You know what the funny part is?" she continued. "What?" her brother asked. She gestured towards me with her fork. "Alex is the only person in this family who still thinks working hard automatically leads to success." The table went quiet for a moment. Then Rachel laughed. "Oh, come on," she said when she noticed the silence. "I'm kidding." But the damage was already done. Her brother wiped tears of laughter from his eyes. "Man," he said, looking at me, "you walked right into that one." Rachel raised her glass like she had just delivered the punchline of the night, and everyone else slowly went back to eating. But I barely touched my food after that. For the rest of the dinner, I mostly stayed quiet. Rachel kept talking with her family like nothing had happened. But inside my head, something had already changed. Because in that moment, I realized something very important. Rachel didn't respect me. And if your own partner doesn't respect you, nothing else in the relationship really matters. When we got back in the car later that night, Rachel looked over at me. "You're quiet." I kept my eyes on the road. "Just thinking." "About what?" I hesitated for a moment. "About what you said at dinner." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Alex, you're still thinking about that? I embarrassed you in front of your entire family." "It was a joke," she said. "A joke about me being a failure?" Rachel sighed dramatically. "You're being way too sensitive." I glanced at her briefly. "Do you actually think I'm a failure?" She didn't answer immediately, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. Finally, she shrugged. "I just think you could do more with your life." Those words stayed with me. For weeks. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't where I wanted to be yet. But that night, something inside me made a decision. If Rachel thought I was a failure, I was going to prove her wrong. Not by arguing, not by begging for respect, but by building something she couldn't ignore. So, the next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I sat down at my laptop and I started planning the one thing that would change everything. Rachel had no idea what I was doing. For the next few weeks, I started waking up at 5 in the morning, before work, before anyone else was awake. I spent hours researching, planning, and learning everything I could about starting my own business. At first, it felt overwhelming. There were hundreds of things I didn't understand. Taxes, marketing, suppliers. But every time I felt like quitting, I remembered that dinner table. I remembered Rachel laughing. I remembered her saying I was the only unsuccessful man in the family. And that memory pushed me forward. During the day, I kept working at my normal job. At night, I worked on my business idea, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning. Rachel noticed eventually. "You've been working a lot lately," she said one night while scrolling on her phone. "Yeah," I replied. She shrugged. "Well, just don't burn yourself out." She didn't ask what I was working on. She didn't seem interested. And strangely enough, that made things easier. Because I didn't want to explain it yet. I wanted results first. Months passed. Slowly, things started changing. The business idea I had been working on began to grow. At first, it was just a small side project, a logistics consulting service for smaller companies. But surprisingly, clients started appearing. 1 turned into 3, 3 turned into 10, and before long I realized something incredible. I was making more money from the side business than from my actual job. That was the day I quit. Rachel didn't take the news the way I expected. "You quit your job?" she said, staring at me. "Yes." "To do what exactly?" "My business." She looked skeptical. "You mean that little project you've been working on?" I nodded. Rachel laughed softly. "Alex, you know most businesses fail, right?" That laugh felt very familiar. It sounded just like the one at the dinner table months earlier. But this time, I didn't argue. I simply said, "We'll see." Over the next year, everything changed. The business kept growing. More clients, more contracts, more opportunities. Within 12 months, I had hired my first employee. 6 months later, I had 5, then 10. And suddenly, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was succeeding. And the strange thing was, Rachel started treating me differently. She became more supportive, more interested. She asked questions about my work. She bragged about my business to her friends. But something inside me had already shifted. Because respect that appears only after success isn't real respect. It's convenience. The real turning point happened about a year and a half after that dinner. Rachel's parents invited us over again. Another family dinner. Another huge table, another conversation about success. But this time, things were different. Her brother was talking about how difficult the market had become. Rachel's father was discussing some losses. Then Rachel's mother turned to me. "So, Alex," she said, "how's work going these days?" Before I could answer, Rachel spoke. "Oh, Alex's company is actually doing pretty well now." I noticed the word now. Her father raised an eyebrow. "What kind of numbers are we talking about?" I calmly explained the growth of the business, the new contracts, the expansion plans. The room became quiet. Rachel's brother leaned forward. "Wait," he said. "Are you saying you built all of that in less than 2 years?" I nodded. Rachel's father looked genuinely impressed. "Well," he said slowly, "that's actually very impressive." Then something interesting happened. Rachel looked proud, like my success somehow belonged to her too, like she had believed in me all along. But I remembered the truth. I remembered the exact moment that started everything. So I leaned back in my chair and looked directly at Rachel. "I said something that night," I asked calmly. "You said you felt like you married the only unsuccessful man in this family." No one at the table spoke. Rachel's expression changed immediately. She knew exactly what I was talking about. "You said something that night," I continued calmly. "You said you felt like you married the only unsuccessful man in this family." No one spoke. Rachel looked embarrassed. Her brother looked uncomfortable. Her father slowly put down his fork. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. But some truths need to be said out loud. "That comment changed my life," I said. "It was the moment I realized I needed to prove something." Rachel tried to smile awkwardly. "Alex, that was just a joke." I gently shook my head. No, it wasn't. The room stayed silent. Then Rachel's father spoke quietly. "Well," he said, "I guess you proved everyone wrong." I looked at Rachel, and for the first time since that dinner long ago, she didn't look confident. She looked ashamed. And in that moment, I realized something important. Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about discovering who actually believed in you from the beginning. And sometimes, the person who doubted you the most is the one sitting right next to you.